Hello everybody, it's me Charlotte. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you all are having a fantastic day so far today, because today we are going to be talking about knitting versus crochet. What are the differences? Which is easier? Which is harder? We're going to go through all that. But first, I want to take a quick second to say thank you to each and every one of you who have already subscribed to my channel. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please do so now. Don't forget to click that bell icon when you do. That way you'll be notified when I upload. And there are links in the description below if you want to follow me on Facebook, join my private Facebook group, or check out my merch store. I have t-shirts, hoodies. You know, fall is right around the corner, so hoodies are going to be a must. It's my favorite time of year. Anyways, and I also have coffee mugs. Check that out if you want. But back to today's video, knitting versus a crochet. As you can see, I have a knit hat and I have a crochet hat. I'm going to ask you guys a question. Which do you prefer the look of? Knit or crochet? Let me know in the comments below if you prefer the look of knitting or crocheting. I would love to know what you guys think. Okay, we're going to take an up close look at the differences in the stitches. So this is just a double crochet beanie hat. It's very basic. It's something, if you're learning how to crochet, it's something you'll learn. It's a very basic double crochet beanie hat, and as you can see, I made this a few years ago for Halloween. It's a long story, but you can see there it's very open. There's a lot of holes and gaps, and you know that is very common with crochet. You're gonna have more holes and gaps in your work, and like I said, this is double crochet. So that is the crochet. And now this is the knit. This was worked with the stockinette stitch, or I actually worked in the round with 16-inch circulars. So I just knit all the way around. Every row was knit except for, of course, the ribbing here. But this is just the knit stitch. So this is just what you see with that. It's very closely, I mean, the stitches are very tight. There are no gapping holes. It's just a very nice tight stitch, and that is knitting. So that is the difference in the looks. Now of course there are other stitches besides the knit stitch in knitting, just like there are other stitches besides the double crochet in crocheting. These are the two basic stitches, I believe, in my opinion, are the double crochet and the knit stitch. So that's why I chose to do hats. But that's the difference in the look of the stitches. And now we're going to be talking about the tools needed to create each hat. Now I'm just going to be talking about hats for right now, because it is that time of year. Everyone's going to be making hats and scarves. I can't wait. But we're just going to be talking about the tools needed to make a hat in knit versus crochet. So we'll go with knit first. To make a hat knitting, you have a couple options. First, you're going to need, I mean, you can do a hat in many different ways with knitting. I guess we'll go over all of them. What you could do is you could get some straight needles. You're going to need a lot of tools when it comes to knitting. You can get straight needles. You can knit a flat panel of a hat. There are tons of patterns online. And then at the very end, you can sew up your seam. You can just sew up your seam and you'll have a hat. That's on straight needles. So you can actually make a hat with straight needles. If you want to do a hat the way I did the hat, I used a 16-inch cable, or circulars I should say. This is not 16 inches, this is a lot larger, but I'm actually currently using my 16-inch circulars, so I'm using this for example. But you would take a 16-inch circular, cast on your stitches, you would then do the ribbing, and you would work in the round. Now, when you get to the crown of the hat where you start decreasing, you have two options. You can switch over to double pointed needles, which I had some double pointed needles. I don't know where they went. Here they are. Now, I'm missing a few. As you can tell, I don't use double pointed needles very often, and when I do, it's for usually just like straight panels of work. But after you work up to the decreasing section of your hat or the crown of your hat, you're going to have to switch over to double pointed needles so you can do your decreases. Can't do decreases on a 16-inch circular because your stitches will become too far and few in between, and you'll be stretching it out and it won't work. So you can do that, switch over to double pointed needles, or you have another option. You can actually switch over to a very long circular needle and do magic loop to finish off your hat for the decreasing part. So that is to make a hat with knitting. So you at least need 2 different things, I guess. I guess you could do a whole hat on just DPNs, strictly. You could make a hat probably with just DPNs. I don't know, I've never done it, but I use the circular, 16-inch circular, and I switch over to magic loop for my decreasing. That's how I make a hat. Now, to make a hat with crochet, are you guys ready? All you need is a hook. No other thing is needed. You just need 1 crochet hook and you can make a hat. You don't need extra tools or extra needles or anything like that, just a hook. So when it comes to knitting a hat, compare versus crocheting a hat, it's easier, I think, with just a crochet hook. But here's the difference in the looks, just so you know. Use a hook, you get this. Use a bunch of different needles and you get this. So I'll leave it up to you guys, which do you prefer? So yeah, that's the differences. Those are the tools you'll need to knit a hat, knitting versus crochet. The next thing I want to talk about is the ease. Is it easier to knit or is it easier to crochet? Well, let's see here. What do we got here? Of course, I got some yarn. We're gonna do a little example here. This is Bernat Premium. I've had this for a very long time. It calls for 5mm knitting needles and 5mm crochet hook. So I have both. We are going to see which is easier in comparison. So I'm going to take some yarn, just real quick. Now when you knit, you need to guess the length of your tail. And what I mean by that is if you're doing something that is, for instance, a hat, you have to cast on, the way I do it, 88 stitches. So to cast on 88 stitches, you have to guess how much tail of your yarn you're going to need, because when you cast on, the long tail cast on in knitting, and there are several different ways to cast on in knitting. I prefer the long tail cast on. You have to kind of estimate how much tail yarn you're going to need to cast on your stitches. And a way I do that, here's a really quick tip if anyone wants to know, is I take the hook or the needle I'll be using and I wrap it around my needle 10 times. Excuse me. And then I'll pull it off and then I'll say, okay, this much yarn is needed for 10 stitches. And then I'll just kind of fold it over on itself until I get to like 80 stitches or, 88, 90. And then I'll use that as my cast on. Yeah. It's a lot more complicated in knitting. I'm going to tell you that up front. Okay, so for knitting, you have to make your slip knot just like you do with crochet. But to cast on, you do this. So that's how you cast on in knitting, and with crochet, we're gonna go over that here in just 1 second after I cut this yarn. So that was how you cast on with knitting. Remember, you have to kind of estimate how much tail yarn you're going to need to do your cast on. And then for crochet, you literally can just leave a little tail, make your slip knot, and you make a chain in crochet. And to make a chain, you just do this, and you chain it however many your pattern calls for. So, the worst thing I can say is with knitting, the worst thing you can do when doing a long tail cast on is you didn't leave yourself enough yarn to actually cast on. And when that happens, you have to undo it all and start over. With crochet though, I mean, you can make a chain as long as you want and you're never going to run out of yarn, unless you use the whole ball of yarn, but you're not going to run out and you're not going to have to redo it. So for casting on and the ease of casting on or chaining, I would say it's easier to crochet. So far crochet is winning. What else did I want to talk about? How about the ease of actually making the stitches? Okay, we will go back to our knit here. And this is just the basic knit stitch, like I said before. And with knitting, your stitches are always live on your needle. And what that means is you're always gonna have stitches on your needle. All of the stitches will always be on your needle. And to knit, you have to use, a lot of people struggle with knitting because of how to hold the yarn and the needle at the same time. And there's different ways. There's English style, there's continental, and there's tons of different ways to hold your yarn, wrap your stitches, do all that stuff. But that is knitting, and it does take a little getting used to. With crochet, we're gonna do that here in just 1 second. Crochet is literally you work in the chain when you first start. So we're gonna do double crochet, 1, 2, 3. And we're just going to, we're establishing our first row, and you just crochet along. Now again, people struggle with holding their yarn with crochet too and their hook and getting the right tension. I think that is something that you struggle with both crafts, knitting and crochet, is just finding the proper way to hold your hook or your needles and get the right tension with your yarn. So they're kind of like equal in that sense. But I will say that this is my first row I'm doing with crochet, and I'm doing just the basic double crochet, which is the basic, I mean, it's a stapling stitch for crochet. Here's that, and here's my knit. And excuse me, allergies, I tell ya, 'tis the season. Okay. That was 1 row of knit and 1 row of crochet. And as you can see, the crochet works up a lot faster. You're gonna get projects done quicker when you crochet compared to if you knit. Knitting will take you a lot longer. So in that aspect of ease of the stitches and just time consumption, I would say crochet wins that as well. I mean, they're easier, it's easier because you only have 1 stitch on your hook, and you can make things bigger quicker compared to knitting. You work like, you get a 1/4 inch of height with each row. Here you get more of like a 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch, I'm not sure, but crochet works up a lot faster. So in that aspect, crochet wins that one as well. Now let's talk about mistakes. If you make a mistake in your crocheting or your knitting, let's see how easy that is to repair. And we'll go here. So say you're crocheting along. I'm just gonna make a quick little mistake, guys. Make a mistake. And what I did was I crocheted in between the stitches opposed to, you don't have to see the mistake made. I made a mistake. I want to repair my mistake. What do? You take out your hook, you pull out the stitches that you made a mistake on. You have a loop here. You just insert your loop or your hook back into that loop, and you continue on with the pattern. It's pretty easy to fix a mistake in crochet. Now let's say we make a mistake in knitting. Let's see the difference there. What I'm gonna do here is I'm just going to do an accidental yarn over, which happens a lot in knitting, especially when you're first starting out. And I noticed that I'm gonna have 1 too many stitches because of my accidental yarn over. How do I repair that or fix that? Well, you can't lose any stitches on your needles. I mean, you have to keep them all live, so you can't just take out your needles and unravel. You literally have to, what's called, tink back to that mess up, to that mistake you made, until you get to that mistake, which is, there it is. Then you can fix your mistake and then go back. So it takes a lot longer, and it's a little more complicated to fix a mistake in knitting opposed to crochet. Another thing about mistakes when you compare crochet with knitting is Say you're working on a shawl or a blanket or something with a lot of stitches. When you're making a shawl in knit, you're gonna have probably close to 200 stitches. I mean, that's like, I think the regular, 200 stitches on your needles. Again, you're gonna need a very large circular needle for that, but you're gonna have 200 live stitches on your needle that you do not wanna drop not one of those. And say you made a mistake 3 rows back, an accidental yarn over that throws off the whole pattern. To fix that, you can't just, like I said, take out your needle, unravel the yarn back to the mistake to pick up where you left off to fix it. You have to actually do what's called a lifeline. That is getting like some thread in a needle, and you have to go through each one of the stitches below the mistake, below the row of the mistake you made, put in a lifeline, take out your needle and unravel it back to that lifeline to correct your mistake. Then you have to take your needle again and pick up all 200 stitches to fix a mistake. It's very time consuming. In crochet, you made a mistake down here. Oh, okay. We'll unravel. Okay, pick up where we left off, and we can continue on with our pattern. Very quick, very easy to fix a mistake in crochet compared to knitting. So when it comes to ease and mistake repairs, I would say crochet wins this one as well. What else could we talk about? This speed. I think we kind of already touched up on this a little bit, but crocheting, I mean, it took me, if we're being honest, it probably took me an hour and a half, maybe, constant work, an hour and a half of constant work to finish this hat. That's not including like the eyes and the decoration. Just the hat alone probably took me about an hour and a half. This hat here, this knit hat here, took me probably maybe 4 hours constant work, I would say. 4 hours compared to an hour and a half. And this one could have taken me longer, I'm not sure. I worked on it in intervals throughout the day. This one I sat down and just made it in one run. So quicker, crochet is much faster. Knitting takes a lot longer. And it might just be because of what we already talked about. You get so much more height with each row with crocheting compared to knitting. So yeah, so when it comes to speed, crochet wins this one as well. When it comes to just making things like circles, for instance, it is so hard to make a circle with knit. You need DPNs, you need a lot of time, there's a lot of frustration, it's complicated. With crochet, it's very straightforward. It takes maybe a little while to get the hang of it, but it's not hard at all once you get the hang of it. And it doesn't take any time. It takes maybe a minute, maybe 2 minutes to make each circle. So think of it like that. There's a lot more you can do, a lot faster you can do with crochet than you can with knit. Now, what are the benefits of knitting? Because obviously it seems like crochet kind of won all these little tidbits and rounds and points that we were talking about today. The difference is, well, you can see the difference. Yes, knitting takes up more time. Yes, knitting takes up more tools and more resources, and it's much bigger of an investment. It takes up more yarn. But is it worth it? Is the outcome worth it? And you have to ask yourself that. Crochet is quick. You can get things done much faster. You use less yarn. You only need a hook, and you can make literally anything with just a hook. But what is the difference? Why do people knit opposed to just crochet? And for me personally, I'm going to tell you, for me personally, I like the way knit looks better. Of course, I love to knit afghans, and I love to crochet afghans and, you know, scarves and things like that. But I believe, personally, if I'm being honest, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, I promise, there are just some things that don't look as nice when they're crocheted compared to when they are knit. The reason I wanted to learn how to knit was I wanted to make socks. And seeing a knit sock compared to a crochet sock, honestly, which one are you going to choose? I chose the knit sock. I wanted to learn how to knit socks so bad that I taught myself how to knit through many YouTube tutorials, many people, and I kind of mushed them all together till I came up with my own process and I learned how to knit. I prefer the look of a knit hat compared to a crochet hat. That is just my personal opinion, and I'm not saying that anyone who crochets everything that it looks bad, because it doesn't look bad. It's just, for me personally, it's a fashion thing, or just a preference, a personal preference. I prefer the knit. Let me know in the comments below, what do you guys prefer? Crochet or knit? Do you think everything looks great when it's crocheted? Do you think everything looks great when it's knit? I would love to hear your guys' opinions. Let me know what you think. But my overall conclusion for knit versus crochet, which is easier, it's gonna be crochet. Crochet is easier, it's less expensive, it's faster. So, I mean, there's so many pros to crochet. The only pro that knit has going for it is the way it looks. And that's me being honest. So, yeah, it takes longer, it's more expensive, it uses more yarn, it's more frustrating. I mean, literal blood, sweat, and tears goes into a knit project. You poke your finger with the needles, it hurts. You sweat because you get nervous and you don't want to drop a stitch, you don't want to miss a yarn over. There's just so much that can go wrong with knitting that it makes you nervous. Hence my name, The Nervous Knitter. It's true. And tears, you cry. The frustration of working hard on something and it not coming out properly, or trying something over and over and over again and it still doesn't come out right. It is literal blood, sweat, and tears that goes into knitting. And crochet, I'm sure some of you have cried and been nervous and excited, but crochet is so much more easy, I promise. I do suggest that if you don't do either, crochet or knit, and while you're watching this video, I'm not sure, but start out with crochet. That'll teach you, you know, it'll get you started, and then move your way to knitting. That's how I did it, and it worked great for me. But I still love to crochet. You guys know this. All summer long, I've done tutorials on crochet. I was in a crocheting phase. Fall is now approaching, and I have been doing nothing but knitting. I'm gonna do a tutorial on how to do this hat. I'm making a scarf. I think I'm gonna replicate this hat, but only in knit. Now that I know how to knit, I think I'm gonna knit this hat, do a replication of this hat. And yeah, because Halloween is almost here, and I'm getting excited for fall, guys. So what to expect in the future is, well, it's fall time and winter, like I said, so more knitting projects are going to be coming out, more knitting tutorials, more videos. So yeah, that's my conclusion, guys. Crochet is easier than knitting, but knitting, to me, I just like the way it looks better. So I hope you liked today's video. Please give it a thumbs up if you do. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to click the bell icon before you go. That way you'll be notified when I upload, and links are in the description below. Follow me on Facebook, join my private Facebook group. Don't forget to check out the merch store. Like I said, there's a lot of funny t-shirts there, coffee mugs, and hoodies. Check that out if you like. That link's in the description below as well. And until next time, guys, I hope you all have a super wonderful, fabulous day, and happy knitting, happy crocheting. Bye.